All right, so let's see how you did. We're going to kind of go through these, and I'm going to go through them pretty quickly. So the first one, number one, you can see it definitely has 4 sides, so it is going to be a quadrilateral. The next thing we're going to do is look to see how many pairs of opposite sides are parallel. You can see that we have 1 pair of opposite parallel sides going horizontally, and then these are parallel as well, which makes it 2 pairs of opposite parallel sides, which makes it a parallelogram, not a trapezoid. Next thing we're going to do is look at our angles and our sides. First, we're going to look for those 4 right angles to determine if it's a rectangle. You can see we do not have right angles here. These are not perfect square corners, so it is not going to be a rectangle. Now we're going to look to see if all sides are congruent or the same length. You can see we have a short side here and a long side here, definitely not all congruent, so it is not a rhombus. And if it's not a rectangle and a rhombus both, it's definitely not a square. So on your paper, you should have written that it is a quadrilateral and it's also a parallelogram, but the further down you go, the more specific the name. So the best name is a parallelogram. Let's look at number 2. You can see it does have 4 sides. If you count the sides, 1, 2, 3, 4. So it is a quadrilateral. If we look at how many pairs of opposite sides are parallel, you can see we definitely have parallel sides here going horizontally. But if you take a look at our diagonal ones, they're definitely not going in the exact same direction. So we only have 1 pair of opposite sides that are parallel, which means it is a trapezoid, not a parallelogram. And if you notice, we don't have to go any further. You can't go into the rectangle rhombus unless it's a parallelogram. And so we're pretty much done. We know that there's no further we can go down the trapezoid path. So it is a quadrilateral. It's also a trapezoid. The best name for this is the furthest name down. It is a trapezoid. Let's look at the next one. Number 3 is definitely a quadrilateral. You can count the 4 sides. If we look at how many opposite pairs of parallel sides we have, you can see they're both going to be opposite and parallel. So that makes it a parallelogram, not a trapezoid. The next thing we're going to do is look at the angles to decide if it is a rectangle with the right angles. And you can see we definitely have 4 right angles there, meaning it is a rectangle. The next thing we're going to do is look at the sides and determine if they're all congruent or equal. We definitely see a long side here up at the top and a short side, definitely not all 4 congruent. So it is not a rectangle. And again, if it is not both a rectangle and a rhombus, it is definitely not a square. So if we trace our pathway down, we have definitely a quadrilateral, definitely a parallelogram, definitely a rectangle, but the most specific best name is a rectangle. Let's look at our final one. If you count the sides, 1, 2, 3, 4, it is a quadrilateral, but we need to determine how many pairs of opposite sides are parallel. You can see these opposite sides are definitely not parallel. These ones in yellow are definitely not parallel, which means it's not a parallelogram. It doesn't have 2. And it's not even a trapezoid. It doesn't have 1. It has 0, which means it's neither a parallelogram nor a trapezoid, which means we're done. The only name for this figure is a quadrilateral. It is the only name and the best name. If you did well on this, that should tell you that you're ready to do your assignment. If you're very confused on this, then I would go back and rewatch some of the videos because your assignment will be very, very similar to this. Your assignment will be a link that you're going to click on. It will be 5 questions that you need to do on scrap paper and submit to your teacher in their Math Google Classroom. Good luck.